The following video contains spoilers to the game Heaven for Death and talks about sensitive topics such as death and suicide. You have been warned. We all know at this point that Nijika is undeniably an angel. From the memes to the copy pastas, we all jokingly worship her as some divine individual. But what if we took it all literally? Well, a month ago in a live stream, I finally played the game Heaven for Death. And today, I will be discussing the tragic and sad lore of this fan game. But I won't be doing this alone, as today we have a special guest. The one, the only, Red Joker.
Hi, I'm Red Joker, the licorice Bocchi Seiyu guy.
And with that, let's ascend into the game. Let's first begin by understanding the laws and systems that govern the world of Heaven for Death. Since this game takes place literally in heaven, it's best to start off with the person in charge of it all, God, or a remix of a supreme deity sustaining over all. The deity in this game interestingly follows the traditional expectation of a divine being who watches over every person and angel constantly. This God refers to itself using us and we throughout the game, which for me, with a Christian background, immediately began speculating that this deity follows the doctrine of Trinity in Christianity, where God is three personas but is still one sovereign deity. Honestly, this doctrine has been long debated among Christians, so I will just brush over it for the sake of brevity. At the same time, another phrase, that person, is used in the game's dialogue as well, raising the question of whether these are two separate figures or different titles for the same entity. Regardless, God dictates the rules of the afterlife, including the duration of a soul's stay in heaven. Speaking of, the afterlife is divided into three different realms: heaven, purgatory, and hell. We can learn more of this through Angel Dariel's notes found in the meeting place with God. Through this, we can understand the history of the afterlife. Originally, all souls congregated in a single location dubbed as the visitation site, but it became overcrowded. In response, God created a second refuge on a mountain known as the prison of refinement, allowing good souls to ascend if they met certain qualifications. However, this place also got overcrowded over time, leading to the creation of a third realm which was created in the sky. These locations eventually became what is known as hell, purgatory, and heaven. The visitation site or the prison of earth became known as hell, the mountain or the prison of refinement is now purgatory, and the third realm that resides on the sky, the kingdom of the sky, became heaven. Heaven is a vast paradise filled with facilities designed to accommodate souls residing there. One angel states that heaven features casinos, recreational facilities like movie theaters, restaurants, resorts, and even a love hotel. I don't know. I guess this god wants some freaky action. In other words, heaven serves as an Elysium. However, heaven has a population limit of 580 souls. This is intentionally designed to encourage reincarnation, but before the events of the game, it now holds over 1,000 residents, causing logistical problems which will serve a role in the plot of the game later. Additionally, there are strict rules to enter heaven. The most relevant is that people who have taken their own lives are not permitted entry. Instead, they are sent directly to hell, where they lose all memories of their past lives. Time functions differently in heaven compared to earth. A single day in heaven appears to equate to many years on earth, though the exact ratio remains unspecified. As stated earlier, residency in heaven is temporary as God intends for every soul to reincarnate. The cycle of reincarnation is fundamental to the afterlife structure, with souls encouraged to return to earth and begin anew. Previously, souls would only spend a few days in heaven before reincarnating, but the growing number have started refusing to leave. These reincarnation deniers prefer to stay in heaven, believing that they deserve to enjoy the pleasures they were denied in their past lives, thus leading to the aforementioned issue of overpopulation. During my live gameplay, Sano made a joking remark that heaven might be a metaphor for NEETs and hikikomoris, individuals who isolate themselves from society and refuse to engage in work or responsibilities. If heaven is facing overpopulation, wouldn't it be easier to force people to reincarnate? Well, technically, the angels in heaven can use brute force, but since this is heaven after all, it is discouraged and deemed inappropriate. The preferred method is persuasion, again relevant to the events of the game. The method of reincarnation appears to pass through a reincarnation portal, which we can hear throughout the game, which leaves us to the other beings that occupy heaven. Angels serve as the administrators of the afterlife, ensuring that heaven, hell, and purgatory function as intended. There is a clear separation between angels and humans. Angels are not former humans, but are instead born as celestial beings, meaning a human cannot become an angel, but angels can become human under the right circumstances. Most angels work on earth, with each town or city having designated angels watching over them. Only a select few remain in heaven to manage its affairs. They possess several unique abilities, such as the power to erase a person's memories of their past life and even manipulate time, though the latter seems to be restricted to heaven. There is also the power to change a person's fate, though this can only be done with the permission of God. Doing so with one's own will is a serious offense against the divine and will lead to severe punishments. Also, angels have access to a database of every soul. They can find information on where they are in the world, what is happening in their lives, and seemingly the fates these souls have entered into in the afterlife. Interestingly, angels receive salaries from God and use a card-based payment system. Why would angels need this? The reason behind this economic system is not clear, as angels do not appear to need material goods in the same way that human souls do. Despite their divine status, angels bear an increasing burden due to heaven's overpopulation. They are financially responsible for covering the costs of souls who refuse to reincarnate, meaning anything a person buys in heaven is taken off the wallets of angels. Poor angels. Some angels are also subjected to examination periods. This seems to be a test or a trial period that is usually done by those who have made by relations and in need to prove their worthiness to become angels. This is relevant as we will now talk of an angel everyone knows and loves who sadly, because of an act of kindness, became subject to the worst punishments from the divine. Meet Nijika L, an angel created by God assigned to oversee the Shimokitazawa area. Her name, by the way, seems to reference other well-known angel names like Michael, Uriel, Raphael, etc., pointed out by Magnadongal during the livestream. Like all angels, she had divine responsibilities and was entrusted with ensuring the well-being of the souls in her domain. She was not alone in her duties. Sister Angelica, a high-ranking angel, was particularly close to her. There are other angels we get to see in the game, such as Angel Cecilia, who handled park maintenance, and Angel Reverie, who served in different roles. For most of her time as an angel, she lived peacefully guarding and keeping watch over the people of Shimokitazawa. Everything seemed normal as it should be. She would observe humanity from a distance, silently intervening when it was necessary. She built a name for herself amongst the angels as being one of the kindest and most compassionate. Sadly, this compassion would lead her to her fall from grace. 6 heaven months before the events of the game, Nijika L encountered a child whose life had been nothing but suffering. This child had been abandoned by the parents, subjected to cruelty by the foster family, and, in the end, was beaten to death before they had even learned how to walk. She could not bear it. Driven by a deep sense of justice, Nijika secretly intervened, altering the child's fate so that they would find happiness in their next life. However, in doing so, she broke the sacred rules of the afterlife, changing a soul's fate without divine permission. God, upon finding out what she committed, punished her severely by stripping off her divinity and sentenced to live as a human on earth. She would have to endure a full human lifetime before she could return to being an angel. Her journey as a mortal would be both a punishment and a test, one that would ultimately shape her future in ways she never expected.
Nijika L gently opened her eyes for the first time under the warm embrace of her earthly mother. She was no longer named as Nijika L, but now as Nijika Ichiji. She eventually grew up to a loving family of 4. She had a sweet and lovable mother, a hardworking father, though most of the time distant, and an older sister she formed a close bond with during her early years. What happens next is something we are familiar with. Nijika, at the age of 9, lost her mother. This loss affected her severely until her older sister, brought back her hope and a profound dream in life. This dream fueled her to learn the drums, which led her to reach out to an elementary classmate, Ryo Yamada, who played the bass. These two formed a deep bond, a friendship that would steadfast throughout the years. After Ryo left her band, Nijika made a suggestion that would turn her dreams into a reality, to start a band with her. This was during their second year of high school. Then she met Bocchi in a random park, and Kita tagged along, forming what we know as kessoku bando. Here, the events of the first season of the anime and beyond take place with each passing day, a step towards her dream for her sister and herself, while enjoying youth with her bandmates. No one, not even herself, knew that she was a fallen angel. She was simply enjoying life to fullest and wishing that the lows and highs of this life she had would last for as long as humanly possible. However, fate had other plans. Despite originally being meant to live a full human life, at the young age of 19, she met an untimely end. One rainy night, she saw a kitten about to be hit by a car and instinctively rushed to save it. She inadvertently sacrificed her life to save the kitten. What seemed to be a tragic accident was instead God's early call for Nijika to return. After losing consciousness as a young teenage girl, she slowly opened her eyes, confronting the divine himself. She stood before God, carrying the weight of her unfinished human life. She had dreams she had yet to advance, a sister she had left behind, and friends she could no longer see. Her 19 years on Earth had meant everything to her, yet to God, they were nothing more than a temporary trial. A trial to determine if she was still worthy to be an angel. Failing would mean to live as a human forever, but unfortunately for this case, Nijika was deemed worthy again and passed with flying colors. Yes, it was a test to determine her worthiness, but for Nijika personally, it was more than that. She grew to fall in love with life as a human and is now enraged that God saw all this as a mere trial. She asks God what those 19 years on Earth were for, and what would happen to her sister and friends now that she has to return as an angel. God pauses and leaves a stone-cold reply. That is something we had not considered worth noting. God, with all his power over all, seems to lack omniscience, not prepared on the implications of this action. Without hesitation, God decreed that Nijika's existence as a human would be erased. All memories of her would be altered, rewritten as if she had never been there at all. Kessoku Bando, her sister Seika, her closest friend Ryo, none of them would remember that Nijika had ever existed. Yet, in the face of this devastating erasure, Nijika was given a single choice. In exchange for losing everything she had built in her human life, she could select one person, just one, whose fate would be changed for the better. After some time, she let out a name, the closest friend she had made on Earth. She let out the name Ryo Yamada, hoping things would work out great for Ryo without her around. However, this game proves that without Nijika, the lives of Ryo, Kita, and especially Bocchi's would take a darker, more painful turn in the end.
Life after Nijika's disappearance was a hollow existence for the remaining members of Kessoku Band. The absence of their drummer, of their real leader, was like a thread pulled from a carefully woven fabric, unraveling everything they had built together. Ryo, Bocchi, and Kita drifted apart, bound only by a shared sense of loss they could not fully understand. On the night Nijika disappeared, Ryo was about to have a sleepover at the Ichichi's, but in a flash, she stood there crying under the pouring rain, not knowing why and how she ended up there in the first place. This is further expanded in the side mangas of the game that a subscriber translated for the sake of this video. Particularly in the manga Swim Out Till the Sea Turns Blue. Ryo for the rest of her life felt something was missing. Why did she remember arguments that shouldn't have happened? Why did she feel the presence of someone she knew she had never met? Ultimately, she fell into a state of gloom and misery for the rest of her life. Bocchi, on the other hand, did not forget. It is not clear how she remembered Nijika, but she was certain that Nijika once existed in her life. She clung to Nijika's memory even as everyone else looked at her with pity or suspicion, feeling she became delusional. "You're talking about your imaginary friend again," Ryo once scoffed in disbelief to Bocchi. But Bocchi knew Nijika had been real. In the Bocchi's POV manga, we can see her fully confident of this, that she had felt her warmth, heard her voice, and lived in the music they created together in Kessoku Band. Yet as time passed, even her certainty wavered. If no one else remembered Nijika, did she ever exist at all? Kita, the ever-radiant light of the band, found herself dimmed. She carried an inexplicable sorrow and emptiness she couldn't name. Her energy waned, and even as she clung to the familiarity of daily life, she was no longer the same. On Ryo's 20th birthday, they made the painful choice of disbanding Kessoku Band. Their passion waned, their music turned hollow, and their purpose faded. They could no longer bring themselves to perform, and as their once energetic camaraderie turned into estranged silence, the band ceased to exist. Even Bocchi had to let go of Guitar Hero, the YouTube channel she built over the years before meeting Nijika and the rest of the band by deactivating it, a lifeless echo of a time they could never return to. A few years have passed, and their situation had turned for the worse. Ryo descended further into despair, which ultimately led to a decision that she invited Bocchi to join as well. "Will you go with me to meet our fate?" Ryo asked, which Bocchi, lost in her own grief, had agreed. They sat in an enclosed space surrounded by thick, suffocating air of burning charcoal, which is a reference to a tragic incident that happened in Taiwan on 1994, where 2 high school students died by suicide using carbon monoxide poisoning from burning charcoal. With smoke filling the room, Bocchi murmured, "But in this situation, we won't be meeting Nijika-chan." Aware of the fact that both her and Bocchi are heading straight to hell with what they're doing and certain that Nijika is in heaven, Ryo suddenly reacted in shock to hearing the name Nijika and begged Bocchi on who this person was to her and why she felt sadness after hearing the name. But before she could get an answer, the carbon monoxide levels were already fatal and she lost consciousness. Before leaving this world, Ryo left a letter of farewell. This can be found at the end of the game using the code 8190. Now, I won't be quoting the letter in full, as first, it can be triggering for some people, and second, I believe reading it on your own is the best approach when it comes to these types of things. But in summary, the letter reveals the reasoning behind this decision of hers. It reveals her lack of purpose and the crippling debt she has gained over the years. She leaves behind her savings to Kita. She apologizes to her parents for being a difficult daughter. She also references the night I mentioned earlier in front of Seika Ichiji's residence. She states that that event still lingers on her mind and leaves her to a loss of self. She explains as well why she dragged Bocchi along to this fate, as she was concerned for her mental well-being. In the end, she leaves the letter with words from a Chinese poet. Life is but a journey. I, too, am only a passerby. However, Bocchi by a miracle survived the attempt on her life as Kita checked up on them and was able to drag Bocchi away from the room now filled with toxic fumes. Despite being unconscious, Bocchi was still alive and was rushed to the hospital. In the years that followed, Kita and Bocchi left Shimokitazawa, choosing to distance themselves from the tragedy that had once been the reality. They lived together in quiet companionship, living off the licenses of Kessoku-pan's songs, though also had to suffer paying Ryo's debt with their own money. Time passed and they grew old, but the shadows of their past never fully faded. As for what happened to Ryo, she was sentenced to hell. But surprisingly, she woke up at the gates of heaven accompanied by an angel with a yellow ahoge, which finally leaves us to the events of the game itself.
Still bound with handcuffs, proving that she was destined to hell, Shimokitazawa greets her and helps her set free. Ryo had lost all her memories, not even sure what to call herself. Henceforth, Nijika, who goes by the alias Shimokitazawa, decides to call her Ryo, reasoning that she found her cool, and later on because she reminded Nijika of her best friend, though she hid the fact that it was Ryo herself that she was referring to. As they explore heaven, Ryo starts questioning her past life. She feels a strange familiarity with the base and inexplicable connection to Nijika. Despite heaven's supposed security, Nijika was able to smuggle Ryo, now classified as a sinner, in. This led to a confrontation between God and Nijika, questioning her on why she had brought a sinner to heaven. Nijika, unaware of what Ryo had committed, was convinced that Ryo was innocent in spite of God telling her that Bocchi also died because of Ryo's actions. She wanted to prove Ryo's innocence by striking a deal with God, risking her angelhood or even a worse fate if she is proven wrong. As we are well aware, Bocchi is, in fact, alive, but God seems to have made a lie about this. When Nijika asked for evidence regarding Bocchi's fate, she was kicked out of God's abode, leaving Nijika not convinced on what happened to Bocchi. After some time, Ryo and Nijika confront each other to finalize their deal. They were tasked to convince 100 souls to reincarnate, easing heaven's overpopulation issue, as mentioned at the start of this video, and ease the financial burden the angels have been enduring through. Eventually, Ryo convinces the first person to reincarnate, but not without controversy, as her methods for persuasion were unorthodox and borderline deceitful. This initially shocked Nijika to see her best friend use such tactics, but this is Ryo's nature in the end, so she allowed it to happen. Ryo quickly gained popularity in heaven, where souls would flock to her, believing she's a fortune teller giving predictions on what would happen in the next life, and convincing them on why they should reincarnate. She was on track to reach 100 souls in just 2 weeks, but decided to slow down her pace midway to spend a little more time with Nijika. However, midway, a soul in heaven recognized her. This soul was actually a fan of Kessoku Bando, and without hesitation told Ryo about her fate, about her ending her own life, about the state of Kita and Bocchi, and leaving with the question on why she is in heaven instead of hell after what she had committed. This altercation eventually led to Nijika telling the truth to Ryo about their life together on Earth, about how she arrived in heaven so soon, about why she feels guilty that on choosing Ryo's fate to be changed, things actually got worse. She began blaming herself as to what happened to Ryo, doubting her deal with God back then and why she didn't turn out the way she expected. Ryo tries to calm Nijika, telling her that it's not her fault, that whatever happened already happened, and there would be no changing that. However, Nijika is still worried about what happened to Bocchi and Kita and wants to find answers, which leads to a choice between staying in heaven or going to Earth itself to search for answers on her own. This leads us to the 3 endings of the game and what they signify.
Determined to uncover the truth about Bocchi and the others, Nijika decides to return to Earth. However, she is under examination and is strictly prohibited from visiting without permission. Defying these rules, she turns to Angelica, who helps her secure a brief window of 10 minutes on Earth. She returns back to Earth. inside a train bound for Shimokitazawa Station. Inside it, she unexpectedly encounters Seika, her older sister. But as expected, Seika does not recognize her. When Nijika instinctively calls her Big Sis, Seika recalls in confusion, treating Nijika as a stranger. For the first time since her disappearance, Nijika faces the reality of her absence in the world. Time has continued without her. Her sister, once the family she only had, has moved on, unknowingly erasing her from memory. Reflecting on the years that have passed, Nijika realizes that on Earth, a decade has gone by. Kita and hopefully Bocchi are nearing their 30s, while Seika herself is now around 40. Her mind races with questions. Has Starry survived? Did Seika ever find happiness? Is she getting married? The more she thinks, the more her heart aches at the growing distance between herself and the life she once knew. Then, a voice interrupts her thoughts. Kita Ikuyo. She sees her alive and well, asking Seika about Nijika and suspecting she was her sister. Then she asks, "Why haven't you introduced her to me and Hitori-chan?" The words send a shock to Nijika. Hitori, Bocchi, is still alive. The confirmation solidifies her suspicions that something is being hidden from her. But before she can process it, time is running out, and the Lord is searching for her. She is left with another choice: return to heaven before getting caught, or defy God and remain on earth. For this ending, she stays. The moment she makes her decision, something unnatural happens. Angelica's voice crackles through the fading connection. God caught them and has severed the communication. Nijika is alone. Then, darkness. She awakens in the past, her 19th birthday. The warm glow of candles flickers before her as her bandmates celebrate, showering her with joyful greetings and smiles. It's a perfect, bittersweet moment, except for one thing. Nijika knows this isn't real. Tears well in her eyes as she watches them, painfully aware that this is the last birthday she ever had on Earth. I shouldn't be here. She knows what this is. God is making her relive this memory, a cruel, calculated punishment. Then a voice pierces through the illusion. This is your punishment, Nijika. It is God. The memories of you who was pulled from this world. This is the result of your choice. The warmth of the celebration vanishes, replaced by an overwhelming emptiness. God's sentence echoes in her mind. The pain of being forgotten by everyone. The suffering of no one being able to remember you. You will have a taste of it once more. Now, as to what actually happened to her after this is unknown. Did she remain on Earth, unseen and unremembered, existing as a phantom in the world she once knew? Did she relive her life from the start, only to die again and face the same erasure? Or was she cast into an abyss, so far from the aura of heaven? Whatever the outcome, one thing remains certain. Her defiance has led her to something worse than hell.
If Nijika instead chooses to stay in heaven, the story takes a more bittersweet turn. She's still desperate to know if Bocchi and Kita are actually alive, but since she can't physically go to Earth, she turns to the next best thing, her laptop, which is connected to Heaven's database. However, as she is the angel designated to the Shimokitazawa area, her database is only limited there. And since we know that Bocchi and Kita left Shimokitazawa long ago, Nijika comes up empty-handed. After a long day of work convincing souls to reincarnate, Nijika takes Leo out for a night of fun. As stated earlier, Heaven's entertainment district is packed with casinos, fancy restaurants, and even love hotels. It's a ridiculous contrast. On one hand, they're dealing with the weight of the afterlife, and on the other, they're surrounded by the extravagant vices of heaven. But this is their reality now, and for a moment, they just enjoy the distraction. Eventually, they grab some takeout and return home, probably Nijika's place, to eat and drink together. The night wears on, and Nijika, loosened by alcohol, finally opens up. She talks about her existence as an angel, how her time on Earth meant so much to her despite it as a punishment, and most importantly, how much Leo means to her. The weight of everything crashes down on her, and Leo, seeing this rare vulnerability, tells her that it's okay to let it all out. To comfort Nijika, she straightforwardly reassures her. You are Shimokitazawa, I am Leo, and that's enough, isn't it? It's a simple but powerful statement. Leo, having lost her memories, sees no point in chasing a past she barely remembers. For her, their bond as it is now is enough. Nijika, on the other hand, still clings to what was lost. Their difference in perspective highlights their contrasting struggles. Leo's acceptance versus Nijika's desperation to hold on. As time passes, we see a montage of Leo continuing her task of convincing souls to reincarnate, while Nijika consistently searches for any traces of Bocchi and Kita. The two of them also share small moments of joy, their dynamic going stronger as the days go by. And in the middle of this montage, the two of them were summoned by God. And while speaking with God, Nijika confronts him about the truth she accidentally discovered, that Bocchi is still alive. God, as always, avoids giving her a direct answer and simply moves the conversation along. But the damage is done. Nijika now knows she was deceived, and once again, she's left grappling with questions she has no way of answering. Meanwhile, Ryo is making progress. In just a month in heaven, she manages to reach 99 out of 100 souls. On the evening before her expected day of completion, she and Nijika have an intimate conversation by the beach, the same one they visited earlier in the game. Knowing she's about to leave, Ryo thanks Nijika for everything, and one line in particular struck a chord in Nijika. Shimo Kitazawa, you are my only friend. It's a quiet, sincere moment. Nijika, who has already lost so much, can't bear the thought of losing Ryo again. But as tears well up, she knows she has no choice. Ryo, you're not allowed to treat your life so carelessly in your next life, okay? Don't eat grass. Take care of yourself. Also, listen to what your friends have to say properly. Don't rely entirely on other people. Also, don't force your weird things onto other people. And also, don't forget about me. Okay? Her words carry the weight of regret, things she wished she had told Ryo while they were alive. She doesn't want to be forgotten. She already experienced the unbearable pain of disappearing from everyone's memory, and she can't go through it again. They say their final goodbyes at the beach, and the scene shifts to a flashback of Bocchi and Ryo during their darkest moment, the night they attempted to take their own lives. It's a haunting parallel. Bocchi and Ryo struggled to find meaning in life, and now Ryo's decision to embrace another chance at it. Back in the present, Ryo meets with God one last time. He acknowledges her accomplishment, albeit with a hint of disappointment at her morally dubious methods. As a reward, he offers her something unexpected. Sinner Ryo, on top of restoring your memory completely, we shall send you through the reincarnation circle with your memories as is. And in an instant, everything comes rushing back. She remembers everything, her past life, her death, and now her time in heaven. But she chooses not to tell Nijika. Maybe she doesn't want Nijika to worry, or maybe she feels like it wouldn't change anything. Either way, she keeps it to herself. Finally, Ryo and Nijika meet the 100th soul. They successfully convince them to reincarnate, and with that, Ryo's time in heaven is up. As she prepares to leave, Nijika suddenly embraces her from behind, clinging to her as if she could somehow make her stay. It's a heartbreaking moment. Nijika, who has already been left behind so many times, has to say goodbye once again. But Ryo, despite tearing up, knows she has to go. We'll meet again someday. Shimokitazawa. And just like that, Ryo reincarnates, leaving Nijika alone in heaven once more. Unlike the bad ending, this ending is more melancholic than outright tragic. It, however, feels unfinished. Ryo moves on, but Nijika is still stuck searching for answers. The hope of a future reunion lingers, but for now, they remain apart. It's a quiet kind of sadness, the kind that lingers long after the credits roll.
Unlike the bad and normal endings, this route offers a sense of closure, though not without its own bittersweet moments. The difference in this ending hinges on one small but crucial choice. Instead of defying heaven and staying on Earth, Nijika chooses to return when her allotted 10 minutes are up. It's a reluctant decision, but one that changes everything. Once back in heaven, Nijika is at least comforted by the knowledge that Bocchi and Kita are alive. She gets a confirmation she needs to move forward, even if she still has no way of directly reaching out to them. The events that follow largely mirror the normal ending. Nijika and Ryo continue their routine in heaven. Nijika keeps trying and failing to find traces of Bocchi and Kita in the database, and the two spend their days together, with the ever-present countdown to Ryo's reincarnation looming over them. But the real shift happens during Ryo's conversation with God. After receiving all of her memories back, there is a new dialogue from her. Hey, God, Bocchi didn't actually die, right? Then why did you say that to Shimokitazawa? This moment is huge because it confirms what we likely suspected. God intentionally misled Nijika. Why? The answer isn't clear-cut, but it suggests that part of Nijika's test or punishment was to live with the weight of uncertainty. In this ending, the final soul Nijika and Ryo encounter before Ryo's reincarnation isn't just some random NPC, it's Bocchi herself. This moment serves as the ultimate confirmation that Bocchi survived the attempt on her life and lived out a full life on Earth. This was also a surreal moment for both Nijika and Ryo as they recognized her instantly. Ryo, now fully aware of everything thanks to her restored memories, takes responsibility. She apologizes to Bocchi for dragging her into that fate. This is something Ryo never got to say before. It's a moment of closure that the previous endings never offered. This also made Nijika aware that Ryo now remembers everything. Afterwards, Nijika hesitantly asks something that's been haunting her. Bocchi-chan, even if everyone's memories had changed, you still remember me? This line is an intentional nod to the well-known Nijika schism within the fandom. Bocchi, despite all odds, still sees her and recalls the fragments of their time together. Despite not remembering everything, she remembered enough to confirm that Nijika's presence was never truly erased. Bocchi then explains what her life was after the attempt, how she continued, how she and Kita stuck together. But she doesn't want to spend any more time in heaven and asks how to reincarnate as soon as possible. This tells us the true tragedy of this game. That's impossible! There are too many strangers here! As Sinopago pointed out, this confirms that Bocchi never truly changed. Without Nijika, she regressed back to the isolated, anxious state she was in before Kessoku-pan. All the progress she made, everything she fought for, was tied to Nijika. And without her, she lost her way again. It's heartbreaking, but it reinforces just how crucial Nijika was to everyone in her life. Before she leaves, Bocchi's only wish for the next life is to play with Kessoku-pan again. It's something that might not happen, but at least it's something to hold on to. Just like in the normal ending, Nijika clings to Ryo, not wanting her to leave. But this time, the moment carries a different weight. Before stepping into the reincarnation portal, Ryo does something that changes everything. She calls Nijika by her real name. Up until now, Ryo had always referred to her as Shimokitazawa, playing along with Alias. But now, with her memories fully restored, she finally acknowledges Nijika for who she truly is. And then, just like that, Ryo is gone. We enter a new scene not seen in the other endings. A few days after Ryo left, Nijika is back to her normal self, being cheerful and happy. Her examination period in heaven is almost over. She knows now that at some point, she will see Ryo again. This realization helps her move forward in a way she never could before. And in one final moment of reflection, she remembers something else. Ryo calling her by her name. How troublesome this got. It's a small, almost playful complaint, but it speaks volumes. Nijika recognizes now that God, in his own roundabout way, gave her closure. He may have made her suffer, but in the end, he allowed her to keep the one thing that mattered most: hope for the future. For all the closure this ending provides, there's one detail that lingers painfully in the background: Kita's fate. Unlike the others, she's still on Earth, living out the rest of her days alone. Bocchi was saved, but in the process, Kita was left behind to grieve the loss of her bandmates. It's implied that she lived much more longer than Bocchi did, meaning she had to endure the pain of outliving everyone she once played with. In a way, she became the true survivor of Kessoku-pan. But at what cost? The happy ending isn't perfect. It never pretends to be, but it offers something the other roots don't: a future. Nijika will meet Ryo again. Bocchi gets another chance. And somewhere in the vastness of existence, Kessoku-pan might just play together once more. At its core, Heaven for Death is a story about grief, loss, and remembrance. It takes the familiar, light-hearted world of Bocchi The Rock and reimagines it through a lens of tragedy and the afterlife, forcing its characters, and by extension the players, to confront the weight of death and what it means to move on. The fear of being forgotten is a devastatingly human experience, and the game masterfully builds its narrative around this theme. Each of the endings explores different ways in which the characters cope with loss, with Ryo and Nijika at the heart of it all, striving to find a meaning in their circumstances and refusing to let go of the people they love. It's a deeply personal and reflective take on the nature of memories and connections, underscored by the haunting presence of Flashbacker, a song about the fear of forgetting and being forgotten, playing in the background in the happy ending, as Pixel Stardust pointed out. However, the game is not without its flaws. Some aspects of its world building remain vague, leaving many unanswered questions about the logic behind the afterlife it presents. As Cop the One criticized that person for feeling needlessly cruel without clear justification, and Wawu pointed out that the game's heavy reliance on arbitrary rules makes it feel less like a natural extension of Bocchi The Rock and more like an entirely separate story that happens to feature the same characters. Additionally, the final episode feels rushed, as Scope the One and Silver Felks noted, with certain plot points such as Seika's fate left frustratingly unexplored. Why does this god seem so limited in knowledge? What exactly changed in Ryo's fate after everything she went through? Could the endings have been structured in a way that made the choices feel more meaningful instead of sudden last-second divergences? These gaps make for a somewhat inconsistent narrative experience.
Despite these criticisms, this game still stands as one of the most impressive Bocchi The Rock fan games to date. It may have its rough edges, but its ability to portray grief in a raw and genuine way is commendable. The game respects its characters, staying true to their personalities while pushing them to emotional extremes that highlight their deepest fears and desires. And at the heart of it all is Nijika, undeniably the greatest of all time. Through her unwavering love, her selfless sacrifice, and her relentless belief in others, she proves that she is truly an angel who fell from heaven. Not just in the story, but in the hearts of fans who will always remember her.
Thanks for watching, and thanks as well for Red Joker for joining me in this video. We also collaborated on another video that is found on this channel, and I recommend checking it out cause it's all about the one and only Sayumin. Also, let me know if you want the two of us to do more collabs in the future or I reach out to other content creators. Shout out to the channel members for their endless support and for you the viewer for watching this video till the end. Okay, off I go!